future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
And greetings and salutations, everyone. Oh, God, what a crowd today. Amazing,
what
amazing.
Crowd.
Greetings and salutations, everyone. You've tuned into Dr. Judy, WTF, and that stands for What the Freud. And we are here to talk about some amazing stuff. And Dr. Judy and I, Walt Lusk, your host, is in studio. We're going to talk about a show today. We're topic driven, and if you want to give us an idea, I was chatting with a friend of mine last week, and they came up with this topic, and I can't believe you and I haven't come up with this one before, Judy.
Well, we kind of indirectly talked about it many times, but I think we're just going to kind of bring it to the forefront
now. We're going to dance around a little bit.
No dancing. Put
okay.
it on the table.
Okay, baby. And the title of the show is entitled Unable to Move On in a Relationship. If you've ever been in a relationship or you kind of still are in a relationship, but the relationship isn't there, this show is for you. And, of course, it's a call-in show. So if you want to call in and get on the couch with your emotional ouch with Dr. Judy, you can call us at area code 323-843-2826. And, of course, you can pull us on Stitcher and iTunes or listen to us live on the UBN app or ubnradio.com or iTunes. And I think we're going to dive into a lot of information today on this show. I wanted to start with a couple of quotes I've stumbled on, and one of them was actually, interestingly enough, was from Facebook. I never hate you for not loving me anymore, but I hate myself for still loving you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people wish that they stopped loving the person and then release themselves from the pain. But it doesn't quite work that way all the time, does it?
No, it doesn't. And we're going to dive into why in a moment.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And so if those of you who've been listening to the show before, you might know about my mind map for healing human disconnect. And wherever we're disconnected from is created a pain. And the pain which we're talking about tonight is the disconnection from a relationship. And the blueprint of that is not in the here and now, but the blueprint of that is at the causal level. And so I want to get into that a little bit so that I can prep your mind, so to speak, and mind map you through why it's so difficult for people to break up. And it all starts with attachment theory. It all starts with the idea that when we are infants, and if we don't get what I call the narcissistic supplies, meaning the proper emotional goodies that we need to be healthy human beings and formulate a healthy human psyche, then what happens is that we pair up with people who will replicate this pattern of attachment. And so let me just go over these principles.
And those of you who want to follow along, if you're listening to us on an iPod podcast, you can go to www, of course, .drjutywtf.com and see the mind map. And there's, of course, a plethora of other information there as well.
So, beginning with the beginning, the causal level, if at the beginning of life we don't get the necessary elements like eye contact, skin contact, breastfeeding, consistency, a certain level of attunement that comes from the mother, because after all, we are nurtured from the outside in. And when we're nurtured from the outside in and we have good enough mothering, so to speak, good enough caretaking, then what happens is that we internalize the ability to regulate our emotions. And so when these emotions become dysregulated, we can turn inward to our good object relations, so to speak, the good relationship between that internalized mother figure and caregiver figure, and have a solid, healthy inner core. And when this doesn't happen, when primary caretaker is absent or inconsistent or not mentally healthy or on again and off again, then it disrupts our internal regulating system, and therefore we're prone to have emotional ups and downs, and then we're prone to latch on to people who we're hoping will regulate us, but end up sometimes not doing a very good job and throwing us into further trauma.
Oh, come on. You can say chaos.
Chaos. Okay,
I
fine.
hate it
I
when
will.
I hate it when that happens.
Okay, so put up the mind map, and then you can all see from the very beginning how this starts.
It's 9 panels.
Right. And this is a from through to model. I now call it how we encode, how we have to decode the negative encodings and then recode, because that's how I do the therapy. I look at the encoding of the person, and then we have to tear down the system that doesn't work, and then we have to build it back up again, paradigm shift, and recode. All sounds so simple.
It's not simple, folks, and it's just like having a virus in your computer. You could sit there all day long and try and figure out the virus, but until that virus is pulled out, you got a virus, and the computer's not going to operate properly. And as you probably can imagine, it takes some antivirus programs to do that, meaning you can't do it by yourself.
Right. And so I called it the psychovirus.
There you go.
Psychological virus.
Yeah.
And it is psycho because it makes us feel psycho, and it cracks our lens of perception. And then we start seeing things in a very distorted manner. I see this all the time in my practice. I see people who get triggered really easily, particularly people who've had trauma in their life, and if they walk into a room and they see a purple coat and the person who hurt them was wearing a purple coat, they may really
freak out.
Isn't
that sort of like a post-traumatic stress disorder?
It is a post-traumatic. Yeah. So in the same vein, when we go through a breakup, what happens is that we get in a relationship, we open up, we begin to trust, we begin to fantasize that this relationship is going to be healing, nurturing, consistent, dependable, or at least really hot, okay, at the very least. And then when it begins to crumble and the detachment occurs, then what happens is it starts triggering off all the past attachments starting from infancy. So if you or anybody you know has had massive disconnects from the first few years of life, and by that I mean things like if you've been in an incubator and you haven't been touched, if you've had inconsistent parenting, if you've been abused physically, if you've been neglected, which is a major form of abuse, then there's your blueprint. So now, skip to today, you're in a relationship and that person isn't giving you eye contact or is inconsistently attending to your needs or doesn't attend to your needs. And then eventually your system can't tolerate it. And although it seems familial and familiar because this is what's being replicated from your family of origin, it still falls apart. And then at that point, a lot of things happen, which is desperation, of course, chaos, panel 4. When the bonds are broken, chaos occurs, defense mechanisms happen, which is that people will try to soothe the hole in the soul and the pain by maybe drinking too much or eating too much or turning to porn or quickly rebounding with another relationship or sexualizing their aggressions. And then at the end, that will break down even further, and there will be either an implosion, which is a major depression, or an explosion, which could be
and a tremendous insult to injury.
Right.
And as we say on this show, do not implode and do not explode, but unload. So again, if you have an emotional ouch and you've got a relationship you just can't get over, give us a call at 323-843-2826. Lan Landers said something that was interesting. Some people believe holding on and hanging in there are signs of great strength. However, there are times when it takes more strength to know when to let go than to do it.
Yeah, I loved Ann Landers. I used to always read Dear Abby, and it does take great strength because we have to go to the infant self to really understand this best. And what the infant is doing is very survivalistic, because that little baby within is trying to hold on to a bond of the bond to the original caregiver, which is mother, father, or whoever is the primary caregiver. And to let go of that attachment is really death to
Well,
that person.
It's interesting you should say that.
Psychological death, physical death, some form of death.
Interesting you should say that here, because there's an article entitled Break Up Detox, How to Move On When You Can't Let Go. And in the middle of the article it says, you have suffered a death.
Right.
The death of a dream. If you didn't deal with your grief honestly, it'll pop up when you least expect it. Surrender to the illusion in your head of being in control and of your life, and surrender to a greater force. They say that trying to forget someone you love is like trying to remember someone you never knew. The brain says time is up, but your spirit and your heart is telling you you're still enmeshed with that other person.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is something that they suggested to write down and say to yourself every day until you don't need to. I thought this was kind of interesting. If he or she was for me, he or she would be with me.
Right.
If it didn't work out, they're not the one.
Right.
He or she's not happy. He is not my happy ending. I will not break, although I may feel like it. I am stronger than I think.
And in order to feel stronger, we have to have those basic core supplies emotionally. And
Yeah,
if we don't have those supplies, then it is excruciatingly painful. And although our brain might want to let go and move on, our emotions are still reacting
And they are
to that attachment, to that desperate need to have another to hold on to, or else really the person feels that they're going to die.
And there's more here that validates that so easily. Why is it so hard to let go? When you're in love and physically intimate with another person, your mind, your body, and your spirit are engaged. Your heart collaborates with your brain, connecting chemicals to create a bond that feels unbreakable.
Right.
Until it is. Seems like you're going crazy when it's over, because withdrawal from that person is the same as a withdrawal from an opiate like heroin.
Well, that's because
Love addicts go from person to person to person without ever healing, which is what you're talking about.
Right, because that chemical spillage into the body, which is all those wonderful endorphins and the dopamines and all of that stimulating chemical high that we get from being in love and having sex. That's why when we have to go through a breakup, it's really important not to be smelling that person, tasting that person, hearing that person's voice, looking at that person. And we'll get more into how to
Again, breakup detox.
Detox from this, but this is really, really a serious problem, to the point where they have Loveaholics Anonymous, and they have groups for people who need to detox from relationships and retreats and so on. But again,
I was going to say, interrupt you. Some drugs require quitting with a step-down system, which we've talked about in terms of your Habit Breakers, Habit Makers book, and others require cold turkey.
Right.
If you've tried to do it gradually over someone that you're still stuck with, it's time to cut off at the source. End contact and close the door. It's called a breakup because it's broken. No more emotional cutting, like reviewing his Facebook page or their happy photos. It's time to go in detox mode. So it's time to go in cold turkey. Get rid of all the stuff that reminds you of them. The cologne, the photos, the mementos, all that stuff. But you have to deal. If you don't deal with the grief, honestly, it'll pop up when you least expect it.
And it'll pop up in dreams, of course. Many dreams are going to incorporate the theme of loss, the theme of anger, and as Elizabeth Kubler-Ross talks about, she did a lot of writing on death and dying and grief process, the anger, the denial, the bargaining, and the long road to acceptance. is a long road, and it's not a smooth road, and it's not like you're marching through these stages, but you might feel these feelings pop up. And what really makes it very, very difficult is when triggers occur, so that oftentimes people will hole in after a breakup and they don't want to listen to any music. Why? Because the music reminds them of the person, or they don't want to smell a certain cologne because it reminds them of a certain person, or they don't want to hang around other people who know that person because that name will pop up and cause excruciating pain.
It's interesting. One of the steps in one of these articles talks about that in terms of the different phases. And I thought this was interesting. This is an article we're going to dive into, I guess. How to let go of past relationships. There's about 10 things they suggest. And this one you're talking about is let yourself feel.
Yeah.
Losing relationship can feel like a mini death, complete with the grieving process. First, you're shocked and in denial. You just don't believe it's over and you hold out for hope. Next, you feel hurt and guilty. You should have done things differently. If you'd only done that, you wouldn't be suffering and experiencing so much pain.
Right.
Then you feel angry, and maybe even you start bargaining. It would be different if you gave it a second go. You know, and I'll say in the end, you wouldn't be so insecure, defensive, or demanding. Then you feel depressed and lonely as it hits you how much you've lost. Eventually, you start accepting what happens, and you shift your focus from the past to the future. And a lot of these articles talk about that. Until you're passionate about something and you look toward something, it's going to be tough. I've always said a long time ago that if you're driving your car and you focus on looking in the rearview mirror, you're going to crash.
And it's interesting that I'm sure that many of you have had this experience that you weren't even into the person originally, and then when they withdraw their love, suddenly, you fall in love with the person. And this is not a falling in love at all. What it is an activation of a very, very painful abandonment. And so the abandonment triggers you to then start chasing the person and grasp onto the person, and it feels like now you're calling it I'm in love with the person. You're not in love with the person. You're in addiction to the person, and or
you're in love with the feeling and the fantasy of being in love.
Yeah,
so you're in love with being in love.
You're in love with being in love, and you're in fear of losing the object of love, and it becomes a big mess, and sometimes it turns around and the person starts chasing you back, at which point you might even start pushing that person away. And Pia Mellody talks about this, and I forget what book it is, but it's really about the dance of intimacy. And this is seen a lot in my practice, where one starts chasing, and as soon as that person starts chasing, the other one starts running, and then the other stops chasing, the other one starts running, and they never get it together. Why don't they get it together? Well, back to the blueprint, because somewhere at the causal level, there really was not established a safe haven and a safe attachment and a secure attachment. So Freud was right. Once again, repetition principle. Why do we keep chasing this illusory relationship? It's not because we're stupid. It's not because we don't understand. It's because truly what's going on is that we want to recapture that lost object that we never had at the causal level.
We're hoping to recapture that. We're hoping to recapture that lost object.
We're trying to heal ourselves from the original injury, and damn it, that person just won't stay still and help us heal. And he or she runs away, and now we're re-triggered in all of these traumatic areas.
And it says here, eventually you got to start accepting what happened and shift your focus from the past to the future. And they suggest one way to do that is you got to go through, of course, the feelings we just talked about. And the best way to do that is to write a journal. And then one of the notes I wrote here is in terms of, the relationship's over, it's broken, it's the past. And he's like, well, maybe, I want to get back with that person. Well, I've been down that road myself, and I've learned that it is easier to give birth than to raise the dead.
Or easier to buy a new egg than glue back Humpty Dumpty,
Yes.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that.
It sure is.
Right.
So you know what? Sometimes you have to take that torch that you're just holding on to, and you need just to, and you've been coddling it and protecting it, and it's kind of going. You need just to blow the dang thing out.
And you know what? One interesting thing that happens in therapy, and I warn people about this all the time, is that once they start growing and their partner isn't part of the growth, they might actually outgrow the person. I had somebody in my practice just this week who got so healthy that her core belief, which was something like, I'm not worthy or I'm not worth loving, began to shift. And so that when that began to shift, she realized that the relationship that she was in was not really enough and not really nurturing enough. So what immediately came up was her flashback to her old core belief, but she didn't really believe it anymore. And so now that she thought that she was more worthy,
Had no traction.
she stopped feeling a strong of an attraction to this particular person. What I thought was super ethical about her was that she invited him into the growth process and said that she would actually be there for him if he got into the therapy and started catching up to her growth. And he just couldn't do it. And
Wow.
so she realized that
Wow.
if she stayed in that relationship, she would be settling for a very, very poor nurturer, somebody who's not capable of nurturing because he himself has been injured, and that there would be not enough for her to interconnect with to really to continue to grow.
Not enough meat on the bones.
Right.
We're talking about lover relationships, but I've got 10 things how to go past a relationship, and a lot of these can be any kind of relationship, whether it be a job or a friend or something
Yeah.
of that nature. And I thought we'd dive into these.
Okay.
And it talks about 10 steps to move on peacefully, since we always talk about having a peaceful healing dialogue
Which is available
on
the website
drjudywtf.com.
under the forms section. So
Sure
for
is.
those of you
It's
who
all
have
it's
been
one page.
asking for the peaceful healing dialogue, go to the website, pull it off of the forms section, and there it is.
It's all on one page. It's laid out really well. And, even if you only use 2 or 3 or 4 of the things that's suggested, you're going to come out better off and have a much better dialogue with somebody than not.
And by the way, the peaceful healing dialogue doesn't mean that you're going to use only peaceful words. The reason I call it the peaceful healing dialogue is because it's really a way to stay connected, even though you have difficult things to say to that person. You're not blowing up the connection. You're simply stating how you feel so the other person can really get you, and the other person can then start extending him or herself back to you so that you could become what Stan Tatkin so wisely calls the couple bubble.
In his book
which I
called
love that term,
Wired for Love. Yep.
Right. And so it's really a dialogue for staying connected, or, if necessary, a dialogue for peacefully healing a connection that does not foster growth.
Right. Either way, it's a good thing to do. So, if you've been holding on to an old relationship, now just might be the perfect time to let go. And here's some ideas, and we're going to go through a bunch of these. First is practice releasing regrets, right? We've all done this shoulda, coulda, and we should on ourselves. SHOULD. When a relationship ends, it's tempting to dwell on what you did wrong and what you could have done differently. This might seem productive, like somehow change things if you're rehashing it. You can't. All dwelling does is cause us to suffer more. When you start revisiting the past in your head, you put yourself in that moment. Focus on the good things and on your current situation. Don't do the what if stuff, because the what ifs never pan out. Second is work on forgiving yourself. I know we all should in ourselves. You might think you might be the biggest mistake in your life, but there's nothing good to go down that road. Okay? Instead, keep reminding yourself that we're all human. Okay? We're all entitled to make mistakes. Everybody does. And if you learn from them, then that means we can move on and improve. also keep in mind that if you want to feel love again in the future, the first step is to prepare yourself to give and receive again, right?
Right.
So you have to forgive yourself.
And I also want to say that it's really, really hard it's impossible to put forgiveness before you release the anger. A lot of people think, oh, forgive, forgive, forgive. But I remind people that forgiveness is the last piece of it. And in order to truly forgive without just slapping on an affirmation and saying, oh, yeah, I'm a good person, I'll forgive, is to really process the emotions and the anger and the hurt and the destroyed fantasies. Because when you're breaking up, you're not, as Walt, you mentioned, you're not just breaking up with a person, you're breaking up with the fantasy that you created with the person and all of the future conversations of the hopes and the dreams that you created with that person. So you're dismantling a whole a world here. Not just the person.
You know, it's funny. When I was in junior high, we always used to make, my buddies and I used to make jokes that we were in like. We would never tell anybody we were in love because, you know, and like was just, you know, it was safer.
Of course.
And, you know, if you got in love, it was like, ooh, you're in trouble. So
Right.
I thought it was funny. It's like, okay, I'm in like today.
Right.
But third thing is, don't think about, this is a big one, don't think about any time as lost time, right? You might have been in a long-term relationship, you know, and 5-10 years, and here you are down the road. It's like, holy mackerel. Again, if you look in the rearview mirror while you're driving down the road of life, you're going to crash.
And you know, Walt, I love that idea that it's not wasted time because it's a learning experience. Look what you get to learn about yourself. I really love this about that particular relationship. I love the way he handled stress, or I love the creativity of this one, or I love the way this person was such a true partner cooking meals with me and cleaning up. And then you learn to know what you don't like. So, you know, it's kind of like a gradual approximation. So every time you go through a relationship, you're really getting closer to what you're defining for yourself as to your truth, what really works for you and what doesn't work for you. And then you can start becoming open and honest with yourself and other people. And like you say, Walt, you can't go shopping in the meat section and find apples and bananas there, nor vice versa. So if you're looking for somebody that you want to have children with, you don't look for someone who doesn't want children. If you're looking for somebody who wants to get married, you don't seek out a person who's a perpetual bachelor or bachelorette.
Or doesn't want, or simply doesn't want to get married.
Or simply doesn't want to get married. Right.
Right. There's no reason to go down that road at all and put yourself through it. Right. Again, it's just shift your focus to everything you've gained, which is just what you said. When you focus on the positive, it's easier to move on because you feel empowered, not victimized.
And that's where it's super important to self-reflect and self-correct, because what doesn't belong in the mind map system, the way I do therapy, is shame, blame, criticism, judgment. Instead of all of that, it's really important to look back at ourselves and look in the mirror and own our own stuff. And so while we do that, we grow, and while we get honest, rigorous feedback from another person who may have dropped us for very good reason, we could take a look at that. Like the alcoholic can say, oh, wow, I guess that doesn't work in a relationship. So, you know, if I want to have a healthy relationship, maybe I should stop drinking. Or somebody who cheats may think to themselves, you know, I really love that person, and that action of cheating ruined the possibility for me to have a wonderful life with this person. So, you know, this is a process of really growing and decoding that which you don't want about yourself and encoding that which you want to keep about yourself, and then finding, I like to talk about biology, you know, finding the right molecule that's going to fit with your molecule and create a synergistic system.
Oh, that sounds like pretty heavy-duty science.
Biology, I know.
And if you're just tuning in, folks, you're joining Dr. Judy WTF, which, of course, stands for What the Freud, here on UBN Radio Network. You can pull us on Stitcher and iTunes, and go over on Facebook and like us. We've gotten a bunch more likes, and we like that and appreciate that. And we're talking about how to get over a relationship that is over. And so you can pull this and listen to this later if you want to. It's great stuff. We're probably going to continue this possibly next week at the rate we're going.
Yeah,
And
there's so much material, and there's so much hurt out there.
Oh, there's so much. I think anybody who's been in any kind of relationship.
Of course.
Have gone through this.
And don't forget, if you're going through a breakup, it's really, really important that if you've decided that this person is not for you, just cut it off. No contact is the best way to really get past this thing. And watch out for your defense mechanisms, because there are unhealthy ones and healthy ones. And if you're feeling that you have that hole in the soul feeling and you just want to drown it with alcohol or food or drugs or jumping into another relationship, then you might want to think twice, because it's not going to fill the hole in the soul.
It's not. It's funny.
It'll anesthetize it at best.
At best.
Right.
It's funny. I have an expression of my own. It says, no surgery is painless. And by that, if you're going to have surgery, the sooner you get it done with, the sooner you're going to be better and over.
Right.
And so, again, if you're in a relationship and it's just dragging on, again, it's easier to give birth than raise the dead, and it's time to just move on. It's over, and you broke up for a reason.
Right.
And number 4 here is remember the bad as well as the good.
Oh, that's difficult, because people split off into the fantasy person, and now they're not breaking up with the negative of the person. It's only the Prince Charming and Princess whatever qualities that they're breaking up over.
20% of us suffer from complicated grief. I wasn't quite familiar with this one. A persistent sense of longing for someone we lost when romanticized memories of that relationship. So the longing can have an addictive quality to it, and additionally rooted in our brain chemistry. We just talked about the science. So it's easier to let go of a human than a hero.
Yeah, and that's where that pining comes, that unrequited love and the poetry and the Romeo and the Juliet, where they don't quite make it.
No. And a big suggestion, number 5 of the 10, reconnect with who you are outside a relationship. Reconnect with any people or interests that you had that you might have just received less attention while you were attached. Maybe the strong, happy, passionate person you were attracted you to your ex. So that person will get you through the loss and attract someone equally amazing in the future when the time is right. So not the sad, depressed, guilt-ridden person clutching on to what was. You know what? You gotta get out there and live your life and love the life you're living.
And spare your friends the traumas and the dramas and the repeat stories, because they'll hear it once, they'll hear it twice, and then they'll say to you, I don't want to hear that name again. Like
are we still on that?
I'm done hearing the story.
And we've already talked about this one. Number 6, create separation. Hope can be a terrible thing if you keep stuck in the past, right? So you will love again. You won't spend the rest of your life alone. In one way or another, you will meet all kinds of people to create all kinds of possibilities. If you forgive yourself, let go, and open yourself up.
The other day I was seeing a woman who recently had to let go of a relationship, and she says, how am I going to move on, because I'm so attracted to this individual? And I said to her, well, if that individual were healthy for you, then you could move on with the individual. But in this therapy and over the course of the work we're going to do together, you will see that as we code the old encoding, your romantic taste buds are going to change.
Romantic taste buds.
Right.
Ooh,
I assured her that her taste
delicious.
buds, like she might have a taste bud for wild men who cheat on her. And by the end of this, it's like, ugh, like, really? Does that really make you feel delicious inside?
Well, our tastes become more refined.
Yes.
And to that note, we got a call in.
Great. Hi.
Hey, thanks for calling. You're on the air with Dr. Judy and Walt.
Hi, Dr. Judy and Walt. This is Nick. How are you guys doing?
Nick at night.
Hi.
We folks, if you don't know, Nick was a guest on our show a month or so ago about some relationship issues and what's new.
Well, Walt, earlier today I had a nice conversation with Dr. Judy just to give her an update on my marriage. And as I told Dr. Judy, and she was very happy to hear the news, and you will be too, Walt. My wife agreed to go into therapy, so that's good news.
Awesome.
That's wonderful.
And so, she was in India. She'll be back from India on this coming Tuesday, and
Oh,
I
my
kind of
goodness.
just basically
Wow,
put it
so
out there to her family, and I said, I can't live like this anymore. Either this will end, or she will be to therapy, And they, like in India, like therapy is kind of considered a negative thing. And I said, you guys don't worry about what it is. Leave it up to me. And I've already found a good counselor here that's willing to take it on. And I kind of mentioned to him that it's about, emotional dysregulation and things like that. And he's willing to help. And that's really good news, And Dr. Judy, as we spoke earlier, it's a blessing for the both of us. It was a blessing for me that I was finally healed so much, as you know, and a blessing for her that she can heal here in America, because it would be very difficult for her to heal over there, So
Well,
I think this turned out to be kind of a blessing for both of us.
Well, the thing is, you're here and you're her husband, for crying out loud, right? So,
Right. Exactly.
it's a lot more healthy for the two of you to do it together, for goodness sakes.
Absolutely, and I think what you did was the highest ethical action any human being could take, which is that you got healthy and then you became the light to her. And as I said to you today in our phone conversation, I think what you did was you created a choice point for her and the family. And I thought it was brilliant, because sometimes we have to checkmate people out of pathology, because pathology is a really ugly animal, and sometimes you have to meet fire with fire. And I think you stood up for yourself, you stood up for her, you stood up for that family, and you
stood up for your relationship, your marriage.
You did. You gave that final invitation to her, which is come with me into health. And I just think that whatever happens out of that, and I said this to you before, and I'll say it again, I think that either way you will feel amazingly good about yourself, that you were in total integrity and did the work, and reached out to a human being that ultimately you do love, and invited her to do the work and set boundaries that say, look, you have to do the work, and I will be with you while you do the work, but you cannot continue to treat me this way. So I really applaud you in what you did.
And you, Walt, you might remember too, last time we spoke, the 2 sessions we had, I mentioned a lot about her mother and how she's so enmeshed with her mother.
Yes.
And I told, she has 3 brothers, and we were speaking on Skype, and I said, look, guys, like they said to me, no, Nick, if you divorce her, then her life will be ruined. But I said, okay, you don't want her life to be ruined, then you guys need to help me. And how is that? You're going to help me?
You're going to help you and helping her as well.
You're going to keep your mother out of my marriage.
I think that's brilliant.
And they said, okay, because it's come down now to their sister's dignity.
Yeah.
So if it's about your sister's dignity, then you're going to help me.
Well, if you've got some cheerleaders at home and, kind of like, Mom, you can't do that kind of thing, then there's obviously hope for you guys.
And then you said something, I didn't want to interrupt you. You did say something that I was really impressed by, which is you said that you became an observer. Go ahead and tell that piece of it.
Oh, sure, yeah. So basically, Dr. Judy and Walt, here's where I am right now, and I'll just kind of say this in like a minute, because I don't want to take up too much of your time. I've become, when I hit rock bottom last year, it forced me to get healthy, okay? I've done so much work to heal now that I finally understand that in a marriage, we're not one person. We're 2 separate people, okay? So when she has a bad day, or she's angry, she's upset, dysregulated, that's her emotions. They're not my emotions, okay? So instead of trying to jump in and rescue and save, which I've done all my life, I take a step back, I put up the stop sign and say, wait a minute, that's her emotions. I'm not going to absorb them. I'm just going to observe them. And then when she's calmed down, I'll say, hey, look, I'm here to listen, and I'm here to support you with your issues, but I'm not absorbing those emotions because they're not my emotions. Right, Dr. Judy?
Well,
You
you're not
sound
taking,
so healthy.
man, you're not even taking ownership
Yeah.
of it. I mean, you're
Yeah.
willing to assist and lend a hand, but not own it. That's fantastic.
And my anger is gone, my resentment is gone, my depression is gone. I feel great. You know, for the first time in my life, my self-worth belongs to me. No one has to validate me. I control how I feel about myself. No one's going to bring me down, okay? And if the therapy works, wonderful. We'll live a nice, healthy life together. If it doesn't work, I know that I exhausted every avenue to make it work.
Yeah. You're working toward to make it happen and make it work, not giving excuses that it didn't work to bail.
And, you know, I believe a lot in God, as Dr. Judy knows, and this situation was a blessing for me to heal,
Right,
and a blessing for her to heal, because had she married a man in India, he was not going to help her heal, you know. And then with her mom right there close by, of course she wasn't going to help either, you know.
Yeah, would have been a disaster.
The only real way for this woman to heal was to basically leave and go very, very far away like she did and come to me. And I'm going to do my best to help her. But keeping in mind, first I take care of myself because I'm a separate person. I'm self-differentiated. I will observe it, but I will not absorb it.
You sound super, super healthy, and obviously you've taken your journey very, very seriously, and you've done the work, and that's why once we do the work, we become a light to another. So now you can literally extend a stronger hand to her, and if she grabs that hand and you can pull her up and help her elevate herself, what more can we do as human beings but to lend a hand and elevate another human being? And you're really embodying that spirit.
You know, the one analogy that comes to mind really fast is, I've used it before, is in an airplane. If the pressure drops and the air mask comes down, you have to put it on yourself first before you can help somebody else.
And that's what I did, Walt.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what I did.
Absolutely
And I'll just finish up with this, you know, with my belief in God. You know, as I told Dr. Judy earlier on the phone today, at first I was kind of mad at God, like, what, you know, why did you put me in this situation? But now I know why he put me in this situation, because he wanted me to heal. He loves me, and he wanted me to heal. And I thank him that I didn't have to go on another 10, 20 years with this emotional damage. You know, I hit rock bottom, and I healed, and I will try my best to help her heal. And I'm not going to rescue or save. I'm only going to assist.
Beautiful.
From
well,
a distance.
What you're going to be in reality, Nick, is her rock. If she
Right.
decides to make you her rock, and obviously together and with therapy and the Lord and whatnot. But that's what is a decision and a choice she has to make, because she has to leave mom and cleave to you.
Exactly, and now they know that I'm not messing around. Look, I mean business. I'm not going to be depressed anymore the rest of my life, okay? This is serious. If you care about your sister, you want her to have a happy marriage, you're going to remove your mother from this marriage. And that's the bottom line.
I love that.
And if you don't, I'm an adult, and I'll take the decision that I need to take for my own healthy life.
There you go.
I really commend you, and I'm so happy to hear this update, and I want.
And I'll keep you updated, Dr. Judy.
Yeah,
I'll keep you updated on the therapy.
Okay.
On the therapy, you know.
Okay.
And I'll email you time to time just to let you know how the therapy's going,
Awesome.
and I hope I give you some positive results.
Very, very.
Well,
very
we'll look forward to
wonderful
more.
To hear this, yes.
So,
thank you so
All
much.
right, guys.
Nick,
Well,
for
thank you
calling
for
in.
having me.
have a great night and morning.
I'll talk to you guys soon.
My
Take care.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
And that was Nick at Night. We had a 2-episode show with him over a month ago. In terms of was talking about was it codependency? I'm trying to remember, or was it borderline? I can't remember which show it was.
Yeah.
But if you want to learn more about his process and what he learned, he found us, and we kind of helped him on his journey. And of course, he's done a lot of work on his own. He's in 2 support groups back there. Code is one of them. We talked about Codependency Anonymous, and of course, has read a bunch of books and has learned and listened to a lot of our shows.
Yes, he
So
has.
we are making an impact, and thanks for listening and being a part of that.
And we're going to continue this theme
We're going to have to
next
continue
week.
this next
Yes.
week because we are out of time except for our song that we're going to shrink. And it's actually surprising we haven't shrunk this artist before. So we will continue with how to let go of relationships and how to 10 steps to move on peacefully. So the song we're going to shrink is, it's entitled Someone Like You by Adele. So I'm going to read the lyrics, and then Dr. Judy is going to interpret it from her experience in the mind map perspective. And then, of course, we'll close out with a song. I heard that you've settled down, that you found a girl, that you're married now. I heard that your dreams came true. Guess she gave you things I didn't give to you.
So her low self-esteem is showing, which is that obviously you found somebody better. She gave you what I couldn't, so there goes her core belief activated, which is probably something like I'm not good enough. And
invalidated it because you found somebody else.
Yeah, right. And so that she's got this fantasy going that his life is so much better off. It may be, it may not be, we don't know. And you got to keep in mind that sometimes people choose other people not because you're not good enough, but that you're just not a good fit or you're not where they need you to be at that point in their life.
The cliche phrase is everybody makes a big deal about the phrase soulmate, 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 soulmate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, another one you might want to consider is soul match.
Soul match.
Soul match.
Mm-hmm.
Old friend, why are you so shy? Ain't like you to hold back or hide from the light. I hate to turn it up out of the blue uninvited, but I couldn't stay away. I couldn't fight it. I had hoped you'd see my face, that you'd be reminded that for me it isn't over.
So she's hoping that this person, her old friend, will see her face and see her pain and have empathy, and that'll trigger off his desire to not hurt her and not leave her. And so now she's beginning to sound a little bit like a borderline personality. You know, she can't stay away. So let's see what she says next.
Never mind, I'll find someone like you.
Mm-hmm.
I wish nothing but the best for you too. Don't forget me, I beg. I'll remember, you said. Sometimes it lasts in love, but sometimes it hurts instead.
So here's her denial. Never mind, I'll find somebody too. You know, maybe somebody better. I wish nothing best for you. That's the BS. Like she wishes that he drop dead and die. and then, you know, there's this little thing of, well, you know, please remember me, because not only is she grieving the fact that he's gone, but that she's afraid that she'll be forgotten, which is even worse.
You know how the time flies. Only yesterday was the time of our lives. We were born and raised in a summer haze, bound by the surprise of our glory days.
So this is the idealization that everything was so beautiful, and you know, and what happened to those glorious days.
I hate to turn it up out of the blue uninvited, but I couldn't stay away. I couldn't fight it. I hoped you'd see my face and you'd be reminded that for me it isn't over. Never mind, I'll find someone like you. I wish nothing but the best for you too. Don't forget me, I beg. I'll remember you said sometimes it lasts in love and sometimes it hurts instead.
Right, so she's resurrecting herself and she won't let go, but then she goes through the stages. Yeah, like I'll show up, but never mind. You know, so there's this kind of a feeling of I'm gone, I'll be back. No, never mind, I'll find some. So understand the pain and the confusion of internally what this woman is going through.
Nothing compares, no worries or cares, regrets and mistakes. They are memories made. Who would have known how bittersweet this would taste?
Yeah, so with that love, she tasted the pain, and so she's probably replicating her first few years of life, which was that somewhere in there in the blueprint, love and pain got meshed together.
Yes, and then we're back to the chorus. Never mind, I'll find someone like you. I wish nothing but the best for you. Don't forget me, I beg. I'll remember you said. Sometime it lasts in love, but sometimes it hurts instead. And that is Someone Like You by Adele, which we're going to close out to. You've been listening to Dr. Judy WTF, which of course is What the Freud. I'm your host, Walt Lusk. And Dr. Judy Rosenberg and I will be back next week, and we will continue our series on how to let go of a relationship that you need to let go on. And if you want to write us, you sure can, and get our notes or comments or suggestions for the show or questions at info@drjudywtf.com. And, of course, like us on Facebook or contact us on Twitter. Until next time, God bless everyone.